It was a quiet afternoon when John was driving home after a long day at work. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a soft golden hue over the winding streets of his suburban neighborhood. The world seemed peaceful, and John was in his usual routine, humming to the music on the radio. He was looking forward to relaxing at home after a long week. As he turned the corner, something caught his eye. A car was parked by the side of the road, its hazard lights blinking steadily. The hood was up, and a woman stood next to the vehicle, looking frustrated and clearly in need of help. John slowed his car and instinctively pulled over to the side of the road, wondering if he could offer any assistance. He stepped out of his car and walked towards the woman. She looked up at him with a mix of relief and exhaustion in her eyes. Her hair was messy, her clothes slightly disheveled, and she appeared as though she had been waiting there for a while. She greeted him with a weary smile. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I've got a flat tire and I've been stuck here for hours. I can't seem to get anyone to help me," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. John looked at the car. A modest sedan that seemed to have been through its fair share of road trips. He could tell by the look on her face that she had been stranded for longer than she had hoped. He glanced at his watch. He wasn't in any particular rush, and it wasn't like he had anything pressing to do. He felt that familiar tug of responsibility, that impulse to help someone in need. "Don't worry about it," John said, offering a reassuring smile. "I can help you with that." The woman's face lit up with relief. "Really? Thank you so much. I've tried calling for a tow truck, but no one seems to be available. I don't know what I'd do without your help." John quickly assessed the situation. It wasn't a complicated problem, just a flat tire that needed changing. He had changed a tire before, and it wouldn't take more than 20 minutes. The woman looked like she could use a break. Her shoulders slumped in exhaustion, as if the stress of the day had drained her energy. John felt a deep sympathy for her and was glad to offer his assistance. "Let me just grab my tools," he said, moving back to his car to fetch a spare tire and the tools he would need as he worked. The woman watched him with an almost grateful silence. She didn't speak much, but her presence felt tense, like there was something she was holding back. Every now and then, she would glance nervously down the road, as if waiting for something or someone. John couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he had a nagging feeling that there was more to the woman's situation than a flat tire. With a few quick motions, John had the spare tire on the car. It wasn't difficult, but he could tell the woman was incredibly thankful. She had been stranded for so long that she didn't seem to know what to do with herself once the tire was fixed. Thank you so much," she said again, her voice filled with sincerity. "You really saved me today." John wiped his hands on a rag and smiled. "No problem at all. Happy to help. I'm just glad I happened to be around." She offered him a tight smile, still clearly relieved, but also a little uneasy. As she spoke, she gave him a quick look over, like she was sizing him up. "I don't know how I would have gotten out of this mess without you. It's really nice to know there are still good people out there." John chuckled lightly, trying to ease her nerves. "It's just a flat tire. Happens to all of us." She nodded, but seemed lost in thought for a moment. Her gaze drifted towards the horizon, and her posture seemed to tense once more. Then, almost abruptly, she shook herself from the daze and gave him a grateful look. "I should get going, then. Thank you again." "Glad I could help," John replied. She hurriedly got into her car, not saying another word. John watched as she drove off, the car disappearing down the road. The dust settled from her departure. John couldn't shake the feeling that there was something odd about the entire situation. The woman had seemed overly anxious, and the way she kept looking around made him wonder if she was hiding something. But he shrugged it off, thinking it was just his imagination. Still, he found himself thinking about the woman for the rest of the day. He hoped she had made it home safely. It had been a simple act of kindness, but John had a strange feeling that the encounter wasn't over. Little did he know, it was only the beginning of a chain of events that would leave him questioning everything. The next day. John tried to carry on with his routine, but the strange feeling from the previous afternoon refused to leave him. It wasn't just that the woman had needed help, it was the way she had acted, as if there was something she wasn't telling him. Her constant glances down the road, the tense way she had thanked him, and the hurried way she drove off it all seemed off, but John told himself he was overthinking it. Maybe she was just stressed from a long day or anxious about being stranded on the side of the road. He tried to focus on his work, but as the hours passed, the nagging feeling continued to tug at his mind. There was something about the woman that made him feel uneasy, as if her story didn't quite add up. He couldn't shake the image of her nervous glances and the way she seemed so out of place, like she was waiting for something or someone. As evening drew near, John found himself walking around the house, glancing out the windows every now and then, half expecting to see that same black SUV from the day before. He had no reason to believe anything was coming, but his curiosity was getting the better of him. What if she had been in trouble? What if she had been running from something and he had just gotten involved without even knowing it? Around 7 p.m. As John was preparing dinner, he heard a car engine rumbling outside. At first, he thought it was just another car passing by. But the sound of tires on gravel grew louder, and soon, a black SUV pulled up to the curb right in front of his house. His heart skipped a beat. It was the same vehicle from the day before, the one the woman had been driving when she left. John's mind raced. What was going on? Why was this SUV back here? Had she returned for another favor? Or was there something more sinister behind it? The vehicle came to a stop, and the driver's side door opened. The woman stepped out, just as she had the day before, but this time, there was no relief in her eyes. She seemed different, more guarded, more anxious. She glanced around quickly, her eyes scanning the street as if she were afraid of being seen. John froze in place. Was this really happening? He didn't know what to think. He had helped her yesterday, and now, here she was again, standing outside his house, looking like she was in some kind of trouble. What did she want this time? Why had she returned? The woman seemed to hesitate for a moment before she walked toward the front door of his house. As she got closer, John could see her eyes, darting nervously in every direction. She looked almost as if she were being followed. When she reached the door, she knocked lightly, but her hand trembled slightly as she did. John's stomach turned. Something was off about this whole situation, but there was no turning back now. He opened the door slowly, his mind racing with questions. "Can I help you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the confusion and anxiety that was building inside him. The woman stood there for a moment as if weighing her options. She then looked up at him, her expression tense and serious. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's important." John's heart began to race. The situation was no longer about a flat tire. Something deeper was happening here, something he didn't understand. He had no idea what kind of danger he might be walking into, but he knew that he was about to find out. The woman glanced over her shoulder once again, her nervousness becoming more palpable. "Please," she said, her voice pleading, "you have to help me. I'm in trouble." John stood in the doorway, unsure of what to do next. He was no longer sure if he was just helping a stranger with a flat tire or if he was stepping into a situation that would pull him into something far more dangerous than he could ever imagine. John hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to make of the woman standing in front of him. She had returned, clearly troubled, but what could she possibly want from him now? Yesterday, he had helped her with a simple, flat tire, nothing extraordinary. But today, the tension in her demeanor was unmistakable. and the situation felt far from ordinary. She seemed to sense his hesitation. Her eyes softened, and she took a step forward, lowering her voice even further. "I didn't want to involve you in this, but now I don't have a choice," she said, her voice trembling slightly. John glanced over his shoulder at the quiet street, feeling the weight of the moment. Something about her urgency was pulling him in, despite every instinct telling him to be. Cautious, he stepped aside, allowing her to enter, unsure of what was to come. She walked in, and he closed the door behind her, feeling a growing sense of unease. Once inside, the woman took a seat on the couch without being asked, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Her face was pale, and her eyes darted to every corner of the room as though she was expecting someone to burst through the door at any moment. John stood by the doorway, unsure of what to do next. "What's going on?" he asked gently, trying not to sound too intrusive. "Why are you here again? What's happening?" She took a deep breath, then looked up at him, with a look of desperation in her eyes. "I didn't tell you everything yesterday," she began, her voice steadying as she spoke. "I couldn't, not then. But now, I need you to understand. I've been running from people who are after me. I thought if I kept moving, kept hiding, I'd be safe. But I was wrong. They found me." John felt a chill run down his spine. Running from people. After everything that had happened the day before, he had never imagined that his act of kindness could lead to something like this. He had simply helped a woman with a flat tire, and now it seemed he was tangled in a web of something much darker. "Who are these people?" John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why are they after you?" The woman glanced toward the window again, her eyes widening as if she had heard something or feared something was on its way. "I don't know exactly," she said, her voice shaky. "But they're dangerous. They have connections, resources, and they'll do anything to get what they want. I thought I could hide for a while, but now they're closing in, and I'm scared. I don't know who else to trust." John felt his heart race. This wasn't the simple situation he had thought it was. The woman was in serious trouble, and somehow he had been dragged into it. He stood there, processing the words she had said. He had helped someone in need, only to find that the woman was caught in a situation far beyond his understanding. But now she was here, asking for his help, and something inside him urged him not to walk away. He had already extended his hand once, and turning his back on her now felt wrong. "I'm not asking you to get involved in anything dangerous," she continued, her voice low but pleading. "But I need your help, just for tonight. Please. I just need a place to stay until I figure out what to do. I swear I'll leave in the morning and you won't have to worry about it again. I promise." John was torn. He didn't know what to believe. Everything about the situation felt wrong. But there was something in her eyes, something raw and vulnerable that made him hesitate. She wasn't just some random stranger asking for a handout. She was someone caught in a nightmare, running from something that clearly had power over her. And for reasons he couldn't explain, John felt compelled to help. The sound of a car engine in the distance startled him, and he turned toward the window. Was it them? The people who were chasing her? He felt a sudden, sharp pang of fear. But it was too late to back out now. The woman stood up, almost as if reading his thoughts. "Please," she said urgently. "They're getting closer. I need to stay here, just for tonight. You don't have to get involved any more than that." John looked at her, the decision weighing heavily on his mind. His instincts screamed for him to turn her away, to walk away from whatever this was, before it consumed him too. But another part of him, something deeper, something that had always believed in doing the right thing, whispered that he couldn't leave her alone to face whatever danger she was running from. And just like that, John made the choice that would change everything. He nodded, the words coming out before he could stop them. "All right, stay for tonight. But after that, I don't know what to tell you." The woman's face softened with relief, but there was no joy in her expression, only gratitude. "Thank you. You don't know how much this means to me," she whispered. And just as quickly as the tension had filled the room, it began to dissipate. But in its place, a new, heavier sense of uncertainty lingered in the air. What had John just stepped into, and how far would it go? The night settled into an eerie calm, but John couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The woman whose name was still a mystery sat on the couch, her body rigid with tension as she stared out the window, clearly on edge. John tried to make small talk, offering her some tea, but she barely responded. Her mind seemed to be 1,000 miles away, lost in thoughts of whatever danger had been chasing her. John couldn't stop thinking about the black SUV that had appeared at his door. It had pulled up in front of his house with such purpose as though it was expecting something or someone. He had tried to convince himself that it was just a coincidence, that it was some random vehicle passing through. But everything about the woman's anxious behavior and the SUV's timely appearance made his gut twist with unease. "Who are they?" John asked again, breaking the silence. His voice was barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile calm in the room. "The people after you, who are they?" The woman finally turned to face him. Her eyes were heavy with fear, but there was something else there, too, something darker. "They're part of a group," she began slowly, her voice tight with reluctance. "A very dangerous one. They're not just some petty criminals, John. They've got connections everywhere. They can make people disappear. I thought I could outrun them, but now, ... I don't know." John felt a chill creep over him. It wasn't just fear in her eyes, it was desperation, something raw and unfiltered. This wasn't just some story she was telling, it was real. And now he was wrapped up in it. The woman leaned forward, her voice dropping even lower. "I've been trying to hide for months now, but they always seem to find me. They have resources, money, people, technology I can't even begin to understand. I was just a small part of something big, something I didn't realize until it was too late. Now they want me to pay for it. And if they can't get me, they'll go after anyone I've ever cared about." Her words hit John like a punch to the gut. This wasn't some random trouble she had gotten herself into. She was caught in something much bigger, and now he had unknowingly stepped into the middle of it. As if on cue, the sound of tires screeching in the distance cut through the stillness of the night. John's heart skipped a beat, and his breath caught in his throat. The woman stiffened, her eyes darting toward the window again. She grabbed her bag from the floor, clutching it tightly in her hands as if it were a lifeline. "Stay here, John," said, his voice calm but urgent. He didn't know if he could do anything, but he couldn't just sit there while danger was approaching. He moved toward the window, his mind racing. Could the SUV have returned so quickly? John peered through the blinds and saw headlights cutting through the darkened street. The black SUV was back. It slowly rolled past his house, its headlights shining briefly through the gaps in the curtains. John's pulse quickened. Was this it? Was it all about to come crashing down? His hands shook as he turned back to the woman. "They're here," he said quietly, his mind scrambling for answers. "What do we do now?" She looked at him, her face a mixture of fear and relief. She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly firm for someone so shaken. "They've found me. Oh, but they haven't found you yet. You need to get out of here, now. They'll stop at nothing to get to me, but if they think you're involved, I'm already involved," John said, cutting her off. He didn't know what else to say. He couldn't just turn his back on her now. I can't just walk away. The woman's face softened for a brief moment, but there was still a deep sadness in her eyes. I know. I didn't want this for war. But I can't leave now. Not with them so close. John's mind raced. The woman had been right. He was already involved, and there was no going back. Whatever danger was coming toward them wasn't something he could just escape from. He had stepped into the middle of the sand. Now he had to deal with the consequences. The sound of the SUV's engine grew louder. John felt the weight of the situation crash down on him. He needed to make a choice, and fast. There was no more time for indecision. Where do we go? John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman took a deep breath and glanced at the door, her eyes scanning the street through the curtains. We need to leave now, she said. They can't know we're here. They'll search the house, and if they find us, ... We don't stand a chance. John felt a chill at the thought. Whatever was coming, they couldn't wait around for it to find them. The woman was right. They had to move quickly, before it was too late. He grabbed his jacket and turned to her, his heart pounding in his chest. Let's go. Without another word, the two of them slipped out of the back door and into the darkened night, leaving behind the quiet house that had just moments before seemed like a safe haven. As they moved through the shadows, John couldn't help but wonder just how deep this situation went and how far he was willing to go to help a stranger. But there was no turning back now. The night air was crisp, cutting through the tension that hung thick between John and the woman as they moved quickly through the yard, staying as close to the shadows as possible. Every step seemed to echo too loudly in the quiet suburban neighborhood, and John couldn't shake the feeling that every movement they made was being watched. The black SUV was still out there, somewhere, its presence looming over them like a storm ready to break. Where are we going? John whispered, keeping his voice low, as though the very act of speaking aloud might betray them. The woman had barely said a word since they'd left the house, but he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes wide with fear as she led the way toward the old alley behind his house. We need to get off the main roads. They'll be looking for us on the streets, but they won't expect us to head into the old industrial district. It's where I've been hiding. Only a few places are safe, but it's better than nowhere. John nodded, barely hearing her. His mind was still racing with the gravity of the situation. What had he gotten himself into? He had helped a woman with a flat tire, and now here he was, running for his life with someone who was apparently being hunted by a group with dangerous resources. Every step they took into the darkness seemed to plunge them deeper into a nightmare he hadn't asked for, and yet he couldn't bring himself to turn away. They reached the back gate that led into the alley. The woman didn't hesitate, pushing. It opened with surprising force for someone so fragile-looking. John followed closely behind, keeping his eyes on the street ahead and trying not to listen for the sounds of approaching footsteps or the faint hum of an engine. Suddenly, a loud bang pierced the silence. John froze, his blood running cold. It came from the direction of the street, the unmistakable sound of a door slamming shut. The woman's eyes snapped toward him, her face ghostly pale. "They're here," she said, her voice trembling. "We've got to move now." Without waiting for a response, she took off, her pace quickening as she dashed into the alley. John followed, heart pounding in his chest. His legs burned with the effort, but he couldn't stop. He wasn't sure what was more terrifying, the thought of being caught or the fear of what would happen if they got too far ahead. Could they outrun these people? Could they really escape? John glanced over his shoulder, just in time to see headlights flash down the alley. The black SUV. It was close. The woman was already turning a corner ahead, weaving between abandoned trucks and dumpsters. John pushed himself harder, every step feeling like an eternity. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, jagged shadows that made the alley look like something out of a nightmare. "You've got to keep up," the woman shouted over her shoulder, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "I know this place sits just ahead." John pushed forward, his lungs burning, his thoughts a chaotic mess. How had things escalated so quickly? He was now on the run, his life connected to a woman he barely knew, and all because he had been kind enough to stop and help her. He thought back to the moment when he'd changed her tire, how innocent it had seemed at the time. Now, that simple act of kindness felt like the beginning of something far bigger than either of them. They reached the entrance to an old, rusted warehouse, one of many along the industrial stretch. The woman gestured for him to follow her inside. As soon as they were through the door, she slammed it shut behind them with a sense of finality. It was dark inside, save for the dim light filtering in through cracks in the building. Dust filled the air, and the place smelled of old metal and neglect. "Is this safe?" John asked, panting and wiping sweat from his brow. The question had escaped his lips before he could stop himself. What kind of place was this? Why had she chosen it? The woman nodded, though the fear still didn't leave her eyes. "It's the only place I've got left. The people who are after me, they know everything about my life, but they don't know this place. It's been a hideout for a while. I only come here when I have no other choice." John looked around. The warehouse was vast, its empty interior echoing with the sound of their hurried steps. Old machinery, some rusted and others long forgotten, lined the walls. The place felt abandoned, isolated. But it wasn't enough. He could still feel the weight of the danger that hovered over them, pressing in from all sides. "How long can we stay here?" John asked, his voice quieter now, as if speaking too loudly might alert the people who were after them. "Not long," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to move again soon, but for now, we wait. We need to figure out what to do next." John nodded, though he wasn't sure what next even meant. How could he help her? What could they possibly do to stay one step ahead of people who had so much control? He had no answers, no plan, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't walk away now. The woman took a few steps deeper into the warehouse, her eyes scanning the shadows as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. John followed her cautiously, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him like a heavy blanket. They were in this together now, whether either of them wanted to be or not. The choices they made from here on out could change everything. And in that moment, John understood that his life would never be the same again. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the vast warehouse, breaking the heavy silence that surrounded them. John followed the woman deeper into the dark interior, each step feeling like it carried them further away from the life he once knew. His heart was racing, and his mind was a swirl of questions, none of which had answers. The woman moved with purpose, her body tense, as if she were preparing for something far worse than just being found. John finally couldn't hold back any longer. "Who are they?" he asked again, his voice strained with the weight of uncertainty. He couldn't understand how the woman, someone who had seemed so ordinary just a day ago, was now caught up in something this dangerous. "Why are they after you? What did you do?" She stopped abruptly, turning to face him. Her eyes were wide with a mix of fear and something else, something John hadn't seen before. It was the look of someone who had been carrying a burden far too heavy for too long. She sighed deeply, running a hand through her hair before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're not after me because of something I did." She began slowly, her words heavy with the weight of painful truth. "They're after me because of something I know. Something I accidentally stumbled upon that I wasn't supposed to see." John's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What did you see?" The woman's gaze dropped to the floor as if she were reliving a memory that she wasn't sure she could bear to share. I used to work for a corporation company that dealt with, well, things I shouldn't have ever been involved with. They're not just selling products, John. They're dealing with information, dangerous, classified information. And I found out about something I wasn't supposed to. John's head spun as he tried to process her words. This was beyond anything he had imagined. What kind of information? And why does it matter so much that they're hunting you down? They're part of something bigger, she said, her voice trembling. They're connected to people in high places, government officials, business moguls, people with power. I found out that they've been using technology to manipulate things, to control situations, to make people disappear without a trace. I didn't even realize what I had stumbled upon until it was too late. John stepped back, his mind racing with the implications of what she was saying. So you saw something illegal, and now they want to silence you? Not just silence me, she replied, her eyes narrowing with intensity. They want to make sure no one else knows. I wasn't supposed to see the files, but I did. I wasn't supposed to know the truth. And now they'll do anything to make sure that secret stays buried. John felt a chill run down his spine. So they'll kill you? She nodded slowly, her expression grim. If they have to, yes. But it's not just me they're after. It's anyone who knows about the project. Anyone who could expose them. I've been trying to keep a low profile, trying to stay off their radar. But I can't hide anymore. They've found me, and now they'll stop at nothing to make sure I disappear. The words hung heavy in the air between them. John was starting to understand the depth of the danger, but it was too much to fully comprehend. This wasn't just about a woman needing help with a flat tire. This was about a vast, shadowy network. Something he had no way of escaping. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of her words settled over him, and he could feel the tension building, pressing in from all sides. He wasn't just helping a stranger anymore. He had unknowingly become part of something huge, something dangerous. And now, he had a choice to make. Do you have a plan? John asked, his voice barely audible as the uncertainty of their situation pressed in. What are we going to do? How do we get out of this? The woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of determination and fear. I don't know how to get out of this yet. But I know that if we don't act fast, they'll find. Wes, they'll know we're here. We can't afford to wait. We have to get the information I have out there before it's too late. John stared at her, feeling the weight of the moment. He had no idea how deep this went. No clue what kind of people they were up against. But he knew one thing for sure. He was already in this, and there was no turning back. His mind raced, trying to come up with some kind of plan, but the woman's next words cut through his thoughts. We need to move, now. They'll be coming for us, soon. The urgency in her voice snapped him into action. Without thinking, he grabbed her arm and pulled her towards the back of the warehouse, where a narrow alleyway led into the darkness. They couldn't stay in one place for long. If these people were as powerful as she said, they'd find them no matter where they went. John didn't know where they were heading, but he knew they couldn't afford to wait around. Whatever was coming for them, they had to face it head-on together. The only question now was whether they could survive it. Asterisk. The tension in the air was suffocating as John and the woman navigated the narrow alley. Their footsteps muffled against the damp pavement. The cold night seemed to wrap around them like a shroud, but it wasn't the chill that made John shiver. It was the feeling that something far worse was coming for them. The woman moved quickly, glancing over her shoulder every few steps, as if expecting someone to leap out of the shadows. John's mind raced. How had he gotten here? Just a day ago, he had been a regular man, living a regular life, and now he was sprinting through the dark, trying to stay one step ahead of a shadowy, powerful group that would stop at nothing to erase both him and the woman from existence. He had wanted nothing more than a quiet, peaceful life, and now everything had changed in the blink of an eye. He could hear the faint hum of an engine in the distance. The unmistakable sound of a car, probably the black SUV, was getting closer. His heart pounded harder, and he urged the woman to move faster. They were nearing the edge of the industrial district now, where the warehouses were spaced out, leaving open, unlit spaces between them. The darkness felt thicker here, like a curtain hiding everything. "We can't outrun them forever," John said, his voice tinged with urgency. "We need a plan. What's next?" The woman paused, breathing heavily, her expression still set with the same mix of fear and determination. She looked at John, and for the first time since he'd met her, there was something in her eyes, something softer, almost resigned. "You're right," she said quietly. "We can't keep running. I've been running for months, trying to stay out of their reach, but now? It's too late. They'll find us no matter where we go. There's only one way out of this." John's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The information. The files I found. If we don't get it to the right people, if we don't make sure they see what they've been doing, it'll all be for nothing. They'll keep going, keep destroying lives. We have to expose them." John's gut twisted. The weight of her words was heavy, and in that moment he knew that nothing would ever be the same. Whatever had been going on behind the scenes, whatever. These powerful people were hiding. It was bigger than either of them, and they were both now caught in the middle of it. "I don't know how to do that," he said, shaking his head. "How do we get this out? How do we make sure someone sees it?" The woman's gaze grew more focused, more determined. She pulled something from her jacket, an old, battered USB drive. "This," she said, holding it up in front of him. "This contains everything. Names, locations, data. They think I destroyed it, but I hid it, and now it's the only thing that can bring them down." John took the drive from her hands, feeling the weight of it in his palm. He wasn't a hacker. He wasn't a journalist. He was just a man who had tried to help someone in need. But now, this small device felt like the key to a door he wasn't sure he was ready to open. The sound of the SUV's engine was louder now, and John knew that time was running out. The woman was right. They couldn't keep running, but they couldn't stay here either. The road ahead was filled with uncertainty, but they had no choice but to move forward. "Where do we go?" John asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Who do we give this to?" The woman took a deep breath, her eyes searching the dark horizon. "There's a man. It's a journalist. He's been investigating them for years. He's the only one I trust with this. I don't know how we'll get to him, but we have to try. If we can get this to him, we might have a chance." John nodded, though his heart was heavy with doubt. It felt like an impossible task. How would they find this man? How would they even know where to look? But there was no other choice. If they didn't act, the woman's story would fade into the shadows, and the people hunting her would continue their reign of terror. Unseen and unchecked, with the SUV now closer, they had no time to waste. The woman grabbed John's hand, pulling him toward a narrow alleyway that led deeper into the industrial district. "We need to move," she urged. Now, they ran faster than before, into the heart of the unknown, knowing that their only hope lay in the truth, one that could bring down a powerful organization if they could just get it to the right person. John didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if they would survive this, if they would make it to the journalist, or if the people after them would catch up. But as they ran through the night, through the dark streets, he realized something. This was no longer just about the woman or the files. It was about something much bigger. Fight for justice, for truth, and for the chance to expose the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. And in that moment, John made a silent vow. No. Matter what happened, he would see this through. They had started this together. And they would finish it the same way. The SUV's headlights finally reached the alley they had turned down, but it was too late. They had already disappeared into the shadows, leaving the dangerous game they had unknowingly entered behind them.